Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. And we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Friday. It is June the 21st, and we are rolling live over on Rumble. We are on X, and we are on YouTube. Yeah, come join us on Rumble, though. Look at the chat over there. They're already out there talking. They're talking anniversary parties. This chat community is one of the best, by the way. You guys are fun. I don't see a lot of the trolling that I normally see in most of the live chats that you'll see. There's just a lot of positivity, which is kind of nice. So if you guys want to join a nice positive chat that's talking about whatever we're talking about, and sometimes something unrelated completely, join us over on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. We'd appreciate it if you do. Make sure you've given us a like wherever you listen and given us that thumbs up. We appreciate that. Today is a Friendly Friday, so we are going to get into some of these topics and some of the weird stuff that's going on in the world. I think a realistic take is necessary as we look towards the end of the year. There's a lot of people that are feeling really good about what's going on. The polling is looking favorable for Republicans, and yet I think that folks are putting a little bit more glint on this than is fair. So I don't want to sober you too much in the weekend. We'll actually go out with a good bang, but we need to be realistic about what needs to be done. There's work that needs to be done. And also yesterday we dropped another episode of Between the Lines. You guys can follow Catholic Vote, my friends over there, and the podcast that we do that comes out on Thursday afternoons, Between the Lines, talking about doing the work. And there's a lot of good messaging there. And in fact, I actually stole an idea from my buddy Steve Friend, who's going to join us momentarily. The idea that America is about hard work and effort. It is not about you show up and you just get things. That is something that is confusing, I suppose, for a lot of the illegals that are coming to this country. Follow Catholic Vote, catholicvote.org/loop. You'll be able to get the loop. Today's lead story is talking about the mechanics of what's going on in this upcoming debate. So you guys can get a little bit of that. More stories about the 10 Commandments popping up in Louisiana. They cover it plenty. I am not going to do that today. We've got some other stuff going on. I think that we're talking crime and punishment. That's what today is about. And so follow my friends at Catholic Vote and our channels on YouTube and Rumble. And if you're listening on either of those platforms, link in the description. All right, folks, easy day. Here he is, the man, the myth, my buddy, Steve Friend. Well, welcome back there, Steve. It's Friday again.
It is, and it's the summer solstice. So happy summer solstice to you today.
Doesn't that mean that there's going to be like a bunch of weirdos doing weirdo stuff and debauchery in the grass under the sun as the stars come out or whatever?
As long as there's not, teenage shootings going on that we don't know the subject description of the parties involved. Just random guns were going off at some point. I don't think that's going to go on in the summer solstice celebration, but you never know. We live in strange times.
Shots ring out. Yeah. Just disembodied shots ringing out. We're going to get right into the stories today because I got a bunch to cover. We're going to try to cram, I don't know what it is, 10 pounds into a 5-pound bag here. So, Steve, lightning rounds. Here we go. You're a federal whistleblower.
Yeah, I don't know if I've been deemed one properly by the FBI, but I think I did everything in compliance with 5 USC 2303.
All right. This one's good. This is a new whistleblower. This is an exclusive, and the exclusive comes from NBC. Folks, a whistleblower from Airbnb says that they weakened their policies on extremists and hate groups. You'll be like, what does that mean? Well, it says that Airbnb said that they were committed to getting rid of members of violent extremist groups, and they hired additional people to find members of violent extremist groups so they can't rent houses. But they've sort of softened their stance on this. So this female contractor who no longer works at this place has now become a whistleblower and went to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, the SEC, I don't know why, Security Exchange Commission, is letting people know that the claims made by Airbnb have softened. Do you feel good about private companies being required to investigate violent extremist group members or so-called hate group members? Is that the America we're living in now?
It is, unfortunately, when they have these relationships, these gross symbiotic relationships with the federal government that essentially deputizes them to go out and do the work for them. I think that Airbnb is probably prominent enough in corporate America that they probably have those sorts of relationships. This whistleblower kind of reminds me, though, of like these environmentalist groups that will bring suit against the federal government, and the federal government is actually funding these NGOs to do that. And then they bring the case, and then the government's like, oh, they make a really good point on the merits here. I guess we're going to have to fold to whatever the extremist environmental group is, and we're going to pay out more and get whatever policy that their preferences were. Meanwhile, the taxpayer is funding that all the way through.
I got to read some of the pieces of the story here. Her name is Jess Hernandez. She worked for Airbnb as a contractor. She wasn't a W-2 employee of the agent or the company. May 22nd, November to 23rd. So she's got 15, 16 months working for them. I've worked jobs that short, so that's fine. Are you ready though?
Send it.
She previously was an extremism researcher at the Terrorism Research and Analysis Consortium, an online database of terrorist and hate groups. And now she's a whistleblower against a company that paid her bills for 16 months because they're not doing enough about, I assume, terrorism and extremism, because that's what she knows about. She didn't plan on being a whistleblower, she says, but that's why she's got Whistleblower Aid, a nonprofit firm that is protecting her legally as she comes forward.
What are the odds that there is some video of her out there doing a Mary Poppins impression singing about mis, dis, and malinformation?
Probably not there. She wrote a complaint. You know how whistleblower things go. It's usually like, hey, here's some documents, here's a policy, this is a real problem, and we bring it to the people that can do something about it. She wrote a 161-page complaint. I think she's actually auditioning for an FBI IA job. Is that possible? She wants to be an intel analyst there?
Well, for a few years, and then she'll take the step up to supervisory intelligence analyst, then unit chief, then section chief, then deputy assistant director, like the one that I spotlighted. There was a highlight of that yesterday by the FBI when the deputy assistant directors was leading a discussion about juvenile cybercrime. And, I went to this very secret place called LinkedIn because apparently deputy assistant directors don't believe that OPSEC is a thing. After all, they are secret agents. But this one isn't actually even an agent. That's her career path. Her career trajectory was intel analyst for a few years, 6-7 years, and then supervisor, and then up into executive management, and now is one of the most important people in the FBI discussing cybercrime when she's never actually investigated a crime.
Why would you have to do that? So, folks, one of the things that we're trying to point out, and we do this on the podcast regularly, so we might as well just say it's a continuing theme, I think, is the accurate way of saying it. When you have an agency, and the FBI is the one that we know the most about, that is ideologically captured, you try to find out what the mechanism was. How did this happen? And one of the mechanisms is taking people away from the badge and gun positions that Steve and I used to hold. And then those people who are in intel analysts, what we used to in the military, sometimes you call them intel weenies. There are intel weenies, and there are people that actually do on the ground intelligence. They're a different animal. And the intel weenies, the indoor dogs, when they're running the agency, like Steve just talked about, taking these jobs that used to be only for, people who have to have a sworn allegiance to the Constitution in a different way, that have actually sort of studied constitutional law and what the rules are and how you're supposed to do it. They have a different mindset about coming after your information, which is why they're so dangerous. I think that's what we're saying here.
Yes, because there's an element when you're an analyst of, I just want information. I'm not really concerned about civil liberties and due processes, because generating an intelligence report, that's not something that's going to be in court, possibly taking someone's freedom away. Whereas the agent, that has to take those things under consideration. They can be like, yeah, I know what you just gave me was evidence of a crime, but the way you went about doing it was illegal. It violated that person's rights. Ergo, for the fruit of the poisonous tree, I can't use it. The intel analyst is like, I'm just dealing with intelligence here. There's nothing, no harm, no foul. And now those people are calling the shots. And because they don't actually have that experience, then they're not considering it when they're driving the mission forward.
When their mission is not related to criminal prosecution, which has rules. It's not Vietnam like the Big Lebowski likes to to make that claim. I don't know why that sits in my head forever, but every time someone says like, "Oh, you're not following the rules," and I'm like, "Am I the only one who cares about the rules?" I always knew I was Walter. I always, everybody else wanted to be the dude. They wanted to be the Big Lebowski or the Lebowski, and it's like, no, I always wanted to be the guy that throws the dirty undies out with an Uzi in it that goes spinning off into the world, just firing off. If you guys haven't seen the Big Lebowski, don't waste your life. Go see it so you have these references. They're important. Okay, we're gonna keep pushing on. Here's kind of the broader picture of what I want to talk about, Steve, because I think this is scary. There's a lot of people in the MAGA movement right now. I'm seeing all these like, I'm with the outlaw. I'm going to put Donald Trump's mugshot on a mug. I'm going to put it on a t-shirt. I'm going to go own the libs with this. They went and arrested our guy, but joke's on you. But there's some real consequences to being arrested, to being convicted, even if we can think it's a kangaroo court. And I'm not confident that people on the political right are taking it as seriously as it should. So we're going to kind of go into the story of where the actual battle is for voters, in theory, assuming we have some fairness, then the actual stakes that are at play right now, which is why we have a picture of you and me standing in front of a Rikers Island. That's Rikers Island in the background on the thumbnail, folks. Okay, that's a real thing. And then maybe your personal experience that you've been at in the last week or so of just people just not really seeing this for the threat because maybe they've never seen somebody thrown in jail. That hard reality. Can you maybe talk about this? Because I think this is actually a good segue. How many people have you put behind bars and actually transported and hand them off to the U.S. Marshal Service, you think?
Roughly to the U.S. Marshal Service. So federal arrests, roughly 150 to 160. Over 100. So, I mean, I'm probably in the area of 250 to 300 arrests career.
All right. And when you think about that realization, when they drive into the Sally Port and they're pulled out of the vehicle, because it's sometimes it's fun and games. Like I've seen people have fun and games. They're joshing with you. They're in cuffs, but you're just a guy standing in a field with them or outside of their trailer or whatever it is. And then there's that hard reality when you pull into the Sally Port and the doors all close and somebody comes in and you download your weapon and you hand them off to a guy they've never met before that's not smiling, and that solid steel door, and then they weigh them in and they do the in-processing. And somewhere during that in-processing, the reality kind of hits the same way that hearing a door close behind you and realizing, like, even as an agent, I'm not getting out of here unless somebody lets me out. And that person that you've arrested gets that real feeling. Can you kind of talk about that sense, like hitting them?
It is a very sterile environment and it is a sobering moment. And they all kind of come to that realization, unless they're a frequent flyer and they know the process. But I've arrested enough newbies in that where you can see it wash over them, the actual realization. And particularly when I was working on Indian reservations, because those guys, even if they were frequent flyers, it was to a tribal jail where they actually knew the correctional officers. They were like family or friends of them. It was kind of like, hey, I'm just going to stay here for 30 or 40 days and then I'll go home. Then it was like, oh, wait, this is different. Now I'm having to put on this actual jumpsuit here. And I don't know, I'm going into this foreign atmosphere here. I had a guy who I arrested at state level who, when I took him, he said to me, do you think I can get my own room? Like it was a hotel. I mean, just completely unaware. And I mean, you could just see the terror in his eyes as he went in. And then there's that, they have like an intermediate space. Like they seal the door off and they have to wait kind of in this like little teeny tiny waiting room until they open the inner door. So they're basically cut off there for as long as it takes. Could be a minute. It could be 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, they call those the man trap a lot of times. And I mean, that's
trap.
What it is.
And you got to watch them until they go in and they're basically in a fish tank. And then they know they're about to get dropped into the shark tank.
Yeah, fish tank to shark tank. That's a good analogy. Kind of like when you take goldfish and you acclimate them to they're sitting in the bag and they're supposed to get the water temperature correct before you dump them in. If you're not a good goldfish owner, then you just drop them right in and then they die. But there's that acclimation period where they get to see, like you said, that sterilized environment. I've seen guys that were used to going to county and then suddenly they get a taste of what the big boy prison looks like. This is not jail where you're going to punch in and out and your buddies are there and you guys are all there and some guys are in for DUI and some guys are in for stabbing somebody. This is federal, and federal prison is a real scary thing. And when you go to the difference between jail and prison, for most people, it's debilitating, like how scary that difference is, because it is shocking and it is serious and the rules are different and you don't know what's happening there. A lot of these guys don't get it. I want to think about the idea of Steve Bannon. They said he's not getting club fed. He's going to get to a real minimum security federal prison in Danbury, Connecticut. And the Republicans have just realized that this is happening, and now they're making motions in the House to try to like vacate the January 6th committee. Little thoughts on that?
I'll bring this around. This is coronavirus all over again. This is the thing that I've said since March of 2020. We had it really good and very comfortable in this country for a really long time, and we hadn't been able to scratch that itch of just feeling really scared. It's fun to go to a monster movie, a zombie movie, go on a roller coaster. And we thought, you know what? Maybe 2 weeks of living in the zombie apocalypse, it'll be kind of cool, kind of fun. We'll scratch that itch and then we'll go back to normal. And we didn't, because it was never going to happen that way. And that's where I'm reminded of this. These guys, they have been weaponized. The government has been weaponized out in the open for a long time, but let's just say primarily in the last 4 years. And you think that they're going to go through all these machinations, go through all the processes to then just be like, all right, we're good here. And I think there's too many people on the quote unquote right on our side who trust the process too much when the process is broken. You guys are playing chess and checkers. They're playing demolition derby. They're playing for keeps. They don't care about your processes. You're waving this letter from mommy that says U.S. Constitution. And they're like, that's a dead letter to us. We're going to blast you in the face because we have all the guns and you've let us do this because you believe so much in the righteousness of how you're doing things. And you have to do things the right way. The paradigm is completely shifted at this point, and only one side actually embraces that reality.
The Babylon Bee ran a piece yesterday that said the FBI is no longer going to be used, the standard silhouette Q targets. They're just hanging copies of the Constitution at the range now.
I mean, I guess it should be a vote of confidence for us that they're so bad, they're probably going to miss shooting most of it away. But yeah, I think they don't view that as the oath of office and the Constitution and their motto of fidelity, bravery, and integrity. They're meaningless to them. It's just lip service that they have to say that they still do, so that people who are suddenly surprised by Steve Bannon going to Danbury, we keep them happy in their delusion for a little bit longer until we're able to bring our troops just to the right spot to then spring the trap.
Here's that article I'm talking about, folks. If you want to read more about it, coming out of Daily Wire, just discussing the fact that 24 House Republicans unveiled a resolution aimed at rescinding the January 6th committee subpoenas, and therefore it may be the underlying crime. Except I don't know if that even works, and more importantly, it's not going to work now because they are doing it less than a week before the July 1st date where Steve Bannon is supposed to report to do 4 months of prison. A 4-month prison sentence. Sorry, that's Navarro's doing 4 months. How many is Bannon doing? It may be in here. If they have the same.
I think the same. And look, they can bring this resolution forward, but it's really not going to be effective unless they have a strongly worded letter attached to it, possibly a meme, and then go on Jesse Waters and maybe Laura Ingraham 2 to 3 times in the next 3 weeks, and then after all that, they could get a fundraising bump by the time that the election rolls in.
I mean, there's a messaging win in a lot of this stuff. There's no doubt about that. And the whole I'm with the outlaw and like, that's all good energy. There has to be a serious underpinning too, where people understand that, yes, that's the public display. That's the costume. There actually has to be a real plan. And what we keep seeing is no plan at all. As you said, checkers and chess, demolition derby. They didn't walk up to the edge not to jump over. These people didn't like climb up to the top of the high dive only to climb back down again. They got this high up on purpose, and there's a lot of evidence that shows that they have. I'm going to kind of punch into some of these. Folks, look, if you're not paying attention to what's out there, this is the reality. So, Steve, give me just a moment here to share. We've got a story from ABC talking about he was convicted in a civil fraud trial. There's still that huge amount of money, $464 million. Trump had to put up $100 million of that in a bond, right? So we've got this in the background. There is money and there are actual criminal consequences that are going to befall Donald Trump. And these are not a joke. So the I'm with the outlaw thing is cutesy right up until the point where they are trying to bankrupt the man and take his freedom until he dies. I'm showing this on the screen here. Also, the situation with Jack Smith, the special counsel who's got multiple cases, one in D.C., which we don't hear a lot about. That's probably the one that is the most easy for them to convict. They love going to the soft districts to do these prosecutions. They love going to the District of D.C. and the Eastern District of Virginia, and then also the Southern District of New York. 3 soft seats for a government prosecution. And he's in one of them. And that bears poorly. They don't need to hit all the shots. They need one kill shot. And right now, they've got as good as they need. They've disabled, because if they can put him in prison and lock him behind bars prior to the election, which they have the ability to do, it may fare well for the election, but it's not going to fare well for the man, right? Can we agree on that?
It's not going to fare well for Donald Trump, but this is the PT buff that we've been hammering on here for the last couple of weeks. Like, their side put the benefits up front. What's the benefit in it for me to come to your side, to be a communist? I mean, that's how you get the Hamas bros, and then the LGBTQ rainbow kamikaze, and then the environmental activists and the Occupy Wall Streeters, who have nothing in common, but they all come under the tent because the PT buff is, you have an enemy, we'll destroy them. And they can't, they've climbed up to the high dive. They can't be like, hey, we got real close to doing that, and then decided, better angels, we're just not going to do it. That's not going to fly on that side. And
let's talk about that, because you got into this with a simulation. You want to talk about the simulation and set it up?
Yeah. So this week I had a chance to participate in a war game that was supposed to be an election war game. They did this in 2020. I presume they probably do this going into lots of different elections, but there was a very prominent one that the Democrats did in 2020, and they were trying to project sort of black swan events, and then how would you respond to them? And I had the chance to role play as the Department of Justice and the FBI in one particular war game, and it just was apparent working through it that there's just still too much trust on the right in systems that are going to go their way. And I just did very obvious things to me that didn't seem to be, they were like, hey, don't try to hit a grand slam every time. Go for, things that you think are likely to happen. I was like, okay, likely to bring a new charge of treason and insurrection against Donald Trump, and arrest him 2 weeks before the election and detain him and get a writ of body to get him out of New York State custody, which he'll be in. He'll be in Rikers Island, and then I'll remand him to the custody of the United States Marshals. And the response was, that's probably a hoax story. It's not really anything. And then finally, when I was like, oh no, I'm actually doing it, they said, oh, okay, well, the Supreme Court said that can't happen because he can't be not on the ballots. And I'm like, you're talking about apples and oranges. I'm talking about what's going to happen, and that's not really outside the realm of a possible scenario. That's not a reach. That's very clear and apparent to me that would be something that the FBI would do. But if you trust in the processes that have been going on for the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years of elections, that to you is, oh, that's just a movie type of script. That doesn't happen in real life. And that's real life now.
We lived the movie. We absolutely lived a movie script in 2015, 2016. Going into that election, the FBI opened up a non-criminal intelligence investigation into the campaign of a guy running for president who won. And that's the story of Carter Page. They went out there and they two-hopped, and they had access to all the comms of his circle and his circle's circle. That includes the guy sitting in the White House. He wasn't briefed on it. He wasn't given the Hillary Clinton, what we call defensive briefing, of which I have participated in defensive briefings. It's specifically a national security thing. So Steve spent more time on the criminal side. I spent more time watching that. When you go do a defensive brief, folks, you go there and you say, look, I know we're on the same team, and we're going to try to help you because we think you're being targeted. And maybe you can also help us get some information. Do you want to run a double agent play here? Do you simply want to just divorce yourself from these proceedings? That's what Hillary Clinton's campaign got. Donald Trump's did not get that. They were set up to be able to prosecute them if some underlying crime were able to sort of materialize. That already happened. Like, that's low level stuff. That's 8 years ago. You think they haven't gotten more nuts? They're now arresting like 75-year-old women and trying to put them in jail till they die.
And then taunting them at sentencing, like, well, one of the tenets of your religion is to value life, so you should probably try to live through this ordeal. But I mean, you're even started at like chapter 2 of your movie plot. Like, the FBI opened a case when Hillary Clinton's campaign came up with a fake dossier and provided to the FBI and filtered it to them to open the case. And then they used it to get fake FISAs. And then they used those FISAs to find about the Hunter Biden laptop. And then went over to Facebook and said, we're going to impact 2020 election because 2016 didn't go the way we wanted. It spanned 2 presidential elections. And we still give this agency billions of dollars. And we don't think that they're going to try to do something like this, that's outside the realm of possibility for the attorney general to stand up and say, 14th Amendment says that if you're convicted of insurrection, waging war against the United States, you can't hold any federal office. I don't care if he has a 1984 Ronald Reagan level of victory. he's not going to take office because there is a lag in time between an election and actually swearing in.
And more importantly, Republicans continue to trust processes that have demonstrated to themselves and to everybody in America that they are not functional anymore. That's the thing that's so hard for me to kind of grasp. It's like, you can't make the argument. It's the same problem with the Mar-a-Lago raid. You can't make the argument there's two tiers of justice, and then when you see the evidence of it, then argue that that shouldn't have happened. Who cares what should have happened? We know what did happen. And it's evidence of the thing that you're actually saying. Accept your own evidence, accept your own arguments, people. It's the scariest thing in the world to watch. Even our live chat is running through, and folks, you guys can go there and join the live chat if you want. Hit the like and make sure you're subscribed to the channel as you're doing so. But there it is, scrolling along. People are saying right now, Steve, Trump's going to win in a landslide, and there's an overwhelming sentiment. I think both maybe a concern on the left and an actual feeling on the right that this is somehow going to be business as usual, despite every bit of evidence that there is no more business as usual in this country. It's bizarre. So the answer is not like, feel good about it and high five yourselves like we did it. Like, you need to get off your butts, which was the story here, which is that Republican women are apparently more motivated to vote than Democratic women. All this is good. All of these polling, they said there was another article, I think in NBC, that was talking about how the enemy of the Biden campaign is actually polls specifically. That's the actual opponent. It's like the polls which are telling them how bad things are.
I think the enemy of the Biden campaign is like a blade of grass that could trip him as he's trudging along like a Roomba. But okay, well, I'll go with polls.
Freaking Roomba. The Biden Roomba. Folks, you won't be able to unsee it. It's Cornholio the Roomba. But we have to act, we have to accept a lot of things on faith that don't seem obvious to me. Number one, that we are actually going to have some election of any kind, because we've seen they've played some of these things out, and Ukraine was a good example. They were just like, hey, by the way, elections are too dangerous. We're at a time of war. We've had elections in time of war, by the way, folks, like much more dangerous and threatening wars.
We've had elections at times of war, and that'll be the narrative. It says, we had one during the Civil War, during World War II. We elected our closest dictator we've ever had in the history of the country to his fourth election. So we can do this. We absolutely, but we have the technology now. We didn't have smart bombs back in the day. They couldn't launch missiles that could hit with pinpoint accuracy. So you know what our soft spots, polling
Ballot
places.
boxes.
So you know what we should probably do? Everybody stay home. Stay safe. No precedent for that ever. Stay home, stay safe. Russia's really bad. China's really bad. Just mail in your ballots.
Maybe email ballots would be up on it. I think that we're not that far from that stupid. Look, like Doug Mackey got convicted of saying just text your vote. I think that if they thought they could get away with it, that the leftists would actually be down with text your vote. Just send,
they have an app. They have an app for it. Some horrible
send your thoughts
app
into
that they outsourced to, a company that had some nefarious sounding name, so that all the right wingers could say like, "Oh, look, Dominion. Let's get this org chart that looks like a can of spaghetti," and we'll never be able to uncover it between November and January.
This is the real thing. I've got this little piece here that I want to touch on. CNN is my favorite. Stephen Colson, anybody who watches this or listens to this show knows that he's my favorite. He may actually be onto something with this particular piece. It says Biden's searing character attacks on Trump may actually tell the story about his own campaign's struggles. I actually think he hit the nail for once, which is to say that the president and his campaign continue to blast the presumptive Republican nominee as a criminal and as a racist who was found sexually liable, or liable for sexual assault, that is now being driven crazy by his loss, that he's unhinged. Some of those things, he was found liable for this thing financially, right? He does have these bizarre civil fraud problems, and he's got all of these legal issues. And then the claim is on the left that it's a hoax or a conspiracy that Donald Trump has blamed them on Biden. It's hard not to blame them on Biden when the campaign basically runs out there and is essentially running on, look at all these things we did. Look at the revenge we promised you. We're getting it. Promises made, promises kept to the political left. And then they're going to try to run away from it. So now they're out there and they're realizing that these backfire because people are going like, that looks pretty unfair, bro. You're in charge of it. Like, you own the stadium and you turn the locker rooms of the opposing team up to 120 before the game. Then they all came out and fainted from the heat. And you're like, look, it's just how it is. Sometimes electrical systems fail. Like, that looks like cheating. If you're cheating, people can see it and they don't like it. And then now you got CNN that has to actually run some cover for it, going like, it's not a good look, guys. He for once, Collinson hits it.
I mean, look, even a blind squirrel finds an acorn every now and then. I think that's
nut.
a fair
I like
point
nut
to
better.
make. But look, they're running so much cover now that they're actually trying to come up with terms for malinformation, because that term has been burned so badly in such a short period of time. That's why they're doing the cheap fakes. Cheap fakes means malinformation. We know that, right?
The cheap fakes thing is really funny to me because when KJP goes up there and says, she actually said mis and disinformation at the same time. I'm not confident she even knows what their terms mean.
I'm not confident she knows what English means, but that's, I mean, she is very
That's fair.
Corinne Jean-Pierre. I mean, she's like Pepe Le Pew, right?
She's a black lesbian. She can do whatever she wants.
She does.
Similar to being a trans person from the bar scene and Family Guy. It's like, oh, you're trans? Just do whatever you want all the time. That's good. That's the America we live in. So there is an element to that is going on right now. If we take these special protected classes, and I want to pivot to this is the real crime that's going on. Yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, I touched on the fact that we saw 250 people declared dead at the Hajj. Folks, I want to tell you, when I'm telling you that people around the world are not all the same, I used to think this when I was younger, by the way, Steve. I was on a plane and I was flying, I think I was flying back from Europe to the United States. I was coming home and I was on the plane with this guy who was an Israeli, and he had this awesome name. His name was Moti Shitrit, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that because I don't speak whatever language that was, Hebrew or yeah. I don't know if Shitrit, but that's how it's spelled out, and he spelled it out for me. And it's like, Moti was a really cool guy, and he was former Israeli army, like everybody. And he had been to Amsterdam recently, and we were talking about how people can all be people and they all care about the same things. That's actually not true. That's what 21-year-old Kyle thought. That is not realistic. The people in the world don't care about people the way that you and I do. They don't think of people as individually valuable the way that you and I do, and Americans do. And here's some more evidence of it. I just want to push this out there to people. This is what it looks like. 250 people died at the Hajj as of the last estimate. No, we've actually got a story from ABC today talking about 600 minimum Egyptians are now dead. Again, from the heat. They're part of the at least 1,000 deaths total that have been reported for this pilgrimage. Every year they do it. Every year they do it in the middle of the summer for some reason, when it's super expensive or super hot. And these people are like, it's 120 degrees outside, and they're marching around in a circle with umbrellas, and then they trample. We haven't even gotten to the trampling death yet. The number of, like, they actually have an authority set up in order to categorize the missing and dead for a religious pilgrimage. Lives are not lives. There's not a one-to-one example of this in the world. And by the way, that's also in all sort of developing and third world type nations.
Without a question, I'm reminded of the high holy day of Yom Kippur in the Jewish calendar, which is the Day of Atonement, and you're supposed to fast all day long, and then when the sun sets, that's you fast from sundown the prior evening to sundown the next. So it's like a 24-hour period. But if you have to take medication, you take medication. If that medication requires you to not have it on an empty stomach, that's not a problem, because even just having the stomach discomfort, let alone the medical complications you could have if you just wind up skipping taking the medication because I'm supposed to be fasting, right? That's not a problem, and that's not a sin, and you're completely in compliance with the Day of Atonement, even if you have a handful of crackers or almonds, if you're Steve Friend, with your pill, like, because we care about life. That's a paramount concern.
Are you eating crackers now? You've added crackers to the diet. It's not just almonds.
Well, I mean, if I have to go up on miles, I might need some carbs to make it through. So saltine there. Well, actually, oyster cracker is probably more appropriate size.
That sounds like your thing. Yeah, I like a dispenser. I like you. You have a bandolier of EpiPens. You have a pistol AR rifle. You have a dispenser that you can go like
a
the
Pez dispenser?
Yeah, like a Pez dispenser, or the chip dispensers in Vegas, where it's like, there's your almonds, and there's your, on the other side would be your crackers. So if you need to go, you can, that way you can appropriately dose yourself with carbs and fats and fiber. You're a ridiculous person. This is why I like you so much, Steve. Okay. In a non-ridiculous way, when I talk about the value of human life, we're pretty specific about this kind of stuff. There are so many examples of us importing this non-value of human life, these non-American values. We're bringing them in. This seems to be the thing. This is where the campaign is really going to hedge on. I don't think it's going to depend on, like, I don't think it's a winning message to say, hey, black people, you commit a bunch of crimes, and Donald Trump just got convicted of a crime. Me same, you same. Is that a winning?
Racist. It's so racist. I mean, for everybody who talks about,
Joe
Biden's
move.
A closet racist. He says things like, poor kids are just as good as white kids. I mean, It's just as racist to say, like, hey, man, let me show you my mugshot because me, you, same. And
it's not good.
No.
There's a degree of empathy that I can expect, like that I can take if you are trying to connect with a population that is being treated unfairly. And that's not how we're seeing this framed per se. If you're going to go out there and say, look, the justice system is broken, and I now have personal experience and evidence of it. And so all of you, whether you're January 6ers or you were Muslims that were unfairly targeted after 9/11, if you saw the weight of the federal government come after you in an unfair way, I now very much get to feel it the same way that you would, and I am facing the same consequences. Me same, you same. I'm good with that one. But if it's like, hey, you're a criminal, you're a gangster, and you dealt drugs to kids, and you have a mugshot, and I also have a mugshot, we're the same, let's get the black vote. That is the most disgustingly racist, stupid thing I've ever heard. That's a Democrat move. That is a leftist move. I'm going to show you some evidence of it from Milwaukee. That they're being dishonest, and we know that that's racist. I don't want to be party to that kind of sort of malfeasance.
From the Milwaukee case, I think that there's another element of it too that I don't even know if you've considered, but why don't you bring that one up?
We'll bring it up in just a second here. Let's go into the dehumanization thing, because this is really a big deal, folks. There are so many stories right now that should be hurting people's feelings. The border thing is where it needs to be. There's a couple of little interesting articles today. One of these, the suspect accused of killing Rachel Morin was just hiding out in Maryland. That shows you the sort of the competency. Everybody thinks that once you do something that you're immediately found. That's obviously not the case. This took months for them to find this guy. The search apparently was 10 months long. They went all over the country looking for this dude, and they found out that he was basically just hanging out in the same area, and then they caught him in Tulsa. So that's one story. I'm going to run through a couple of them real quick here, Steve. This is the other one that should have people completely outraged. These two scumbags that you're seeing on the screen, they are also illegals. This is the New York Post story. They came in through El Paso, Texas, or the area around El Paso, Texas. They were released into the United States, and then they went and killed a 12-year-old girl. I didn't put her picture on there. It's actually really troubling. She's this little girl with braces, just a sweet thing. Like, what on earth are we doing bringing these types of folks, into this country? And then we're going to act like they're going to behave like they're supposed to when there's no evidence of it. There's no evidence of this sort of behavior because that's not where they come from.
It's a mistake of assuming that systems are going to work by both sides in that case. And I think that there's nefarious intentions of flooding the border and, we're going to legalize them and make sure that they can vote for us. But that's first level analysis. You're assuming that they're also going to vote for you, but then embody and embrace the way that we act in the civil society in America. And that's not going to happen. It's no different than thinking that, I trust in the systems of the election. I trust that the FBI is going to do the right thing, and they're not going to weaponize their processes, even when you have proof of concept that they're doing that. We have untold proofs of concept when it comes to these people coming across the border, and they come from a particular region of the world that does not value human life. They're savage. There's no other way to say that.
Yeah,
and
here's the thing:
I'm
you got to give
apologizing for it.
No, you give Donald Trump credit for where credit's due when he referred to there are countries in this world that are shithole countries. So let's, and the media lost their mind. They're like, oh, it's racist. You know what's racist is denying reality because of the way someone looks, or you think they're part of some sort of a group that you've lumped them in. That's a bigoted response. It's not accurate to the way that things actually go down on the ground over there.
Michael Malice asked this question, and it's a very simple question. It's a very simple test of your worldview. He says, are some people better than others? I think you could maybe change it for this discussion a little better. Are some cultures better than others? And if you say yes, well, you're conservative. And if you have to answer with, like an Intel analyst level 161-page fake whistleblower response, then you have a leftist worldview.
It is simple. Right. There are gradations, right? The world is full of gray. It's not generally black and white. And you know how you can always destroy that thing of the 161-page response. It's like, okay, well, which ones are you prepared to live in right now?
Look.
All countries? Are you willing to move to all countries? Do you want to go to Yemen right now? Does that sound cool to you? How about Somalia? Are you interested in moving to Somalia?
Do you think that overpopulation is angering Gaia, the god, and causing the temperature to go up? Kill yourself. Kill yourself.
Live by those values. The minute you can't live by your values, I'm blatant about this stuff. I don't even like America first. I think that's not extreme enough. That's how extreme I am. It's like I'm America only. I actually don't care what happens to. I don't even care what happens to Canada. Not right
America's
now.
hat. I mean, there's a little bit of heartstrings for them, but no, not the way their current
Attic.
trajectory
America's
is.
attic. That's where we keep our stuff that we need. We think we might need at some point, but we don't need right now. It's just hanging out up there.
Yeah,
It's just a cold storage
Where will we
attic.
get our Canadian bacon from?
Is that where Canadian bacon comes from? Oh, you heard it here first, folks. I had no idea. Why do they even call it Canadian bacon? What a dumb name.
I don't know.
Somebody tell me in the chat why they call it Canadian bacon when they
Justice
just
is
mean
blonde
ham.
will be on that one. She's normally pretty. I'm assuming Justice is a gender, but she's probably pretty good on the facts.
She's in there. She was one of the last commenters in the chat. All right, let me break away for 1 second, and then I'm going to tell you some of the things that are actually sort of admitting the reality of the chaos on the ground, even in the places that are sort of upstream in this immigration crisis, because it's kind of fun to see. Before we do that, Patriot Coolers is one of our favorite sponsors, and they have been with us since February of last year. We're really appreciative, folks. If you want to go and get your own Patriot Cooler tumbler or hard-sided cooler, you can do so at patriotcoolers.com. Don't forget to use my promo code, because it'll save you money. That's the biggest reason. KYLE saves you 10%. It also lets them know that we sent you over there. And if you are so inclined, you can also customize your tumbler. I have several of their customized tumblers now, and I bought a whole slew of them for my friend Steve and for Garrett. And our producer emeritus, producer Phil, actually bought his own. I don't know why. I said I would send him one, but he bought his own. PatriotCoolers.com. Again, the website, Patriot Coolers with an S on the end of it.com. The promo code KYLE. Use it, live it, love it. And you can always find a link in the show descriptions. If you're like, hey, man, I don't know how to spell those things. You just said too many letters. How do I get there? Just check out our show notes. They're always in there for you. How about this one? You ready, Steve? This is, I feel like this, I think this proves that things are going awry. Because historically, what we found out is that there was this weird pathway for Chinese illegals to sneak into the United States, and they were using Ecuador. If you guys follow Anthony Rubin and Muckraker at muckraker.com, he actually went down to this Darien Gap situation, found out that there were entire pathways for the Chinese to sort of exploit this loophole, which was that in Ecuador, there was no requirement of a visa for Chinese nationals to fly in, land there, and then make the land trek all the way up to the United States border and sneak in. 60 Minutes now covering it. There is something of note to note, even when 60 Minutes of CBS is covering on this story, they have now changed the rules. Ecuador's like, I think we need to stop this waiver with no visa requirement for Chinese nationals. They seem to be taking advantage of it. They're flying in here and then they are walking up to Tijuana, Mexico, and they are rolling into the United States. I find that to be the proof of concept when Ecuador thinks they're not even staying in Ecuador, but they are now being burdened by the number of Chinese illegals. When they see that to be a problem, that they change their immigration laws, the United States can't do the same thing. Why not?
It's not a political winner, or they don't deem it to be a political winner if they're on the left and in charge of everything. This is what I was taught in high school when I was in junior ROTC, and my instructor said, China could walk 1 million people over the border and have them surrender, and then the next day do the same thing, and the next day do the same thing, and before the week is out, whoever they were surrendering to would surrender in the fight, and they wouldn't have to fire a shot. They're doing the exact same thing, and I don't know how many they've got, and I don't know where they are. They're walking across in combat boots, and nobody seems to be concerned about it. If we're the people that theoretically are supposed to be in a position of authority and going to take this information and make the decisions that are necessary, they can't be concerned. Look, their higher directive is, well, we can't have a temporary partial government shutdown. We just have to allow the flood to continue. That's the more optimal outcome.
Predetermined outcomes. You want to know what happened in the chat? They solved our Canadian bacon question. Folks, this is why our chat is far superior. They give us real-time answers. I have no idea if these are true, but they seem like they come from reputable sources because they are our monthly supporters. Canadian bacon is cured differently and, of course, is round. It is given in the backstrap. It is the backstrap, also known as back bacon. And originally, apparently, it was known as Canadian bacon because it was imported to New York from Toronto. So saith our chat. Folks, you can fact check that if you like, but I'm taking it as gospel and I'm running with it. That is now my new illusory truth. Whether it's true or not, I'm going to tell people that it was originally imported, and that's why we think that way. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll just call it Toronto bacon from now on.
I like Toronto bacon better.
It sounds more ethnic. More, yeah.
It sounds more cosmopolitan is the accurate statement, I think. right?
They definitely have a more cosmopolitan feel in Toronto than they do in the rest of the United States. But I think America is superior just because we're not sipping Cosmos on the corner and freezing our butts off because you're in Toronto and you're north of North Dakota.
I actually like the idea of a cold city, and that won't surprise you. But as an iguana, I understand why you would not want to do that. Folks, if Steve's body temperature gets below 98.8, he actually starts to go into just reckless shivers, which is why when we've met for the first time in person, after many, many converses and interviews together and all these other kind of phone chats, Steve was wearing a jacket in the middle of, what was it, June or July? Was it July when we were
May in Houston.
Was it May? May, June, and July are basically all summer in Texas. They are all insanely hot. They are all sweaty, flip-flop, and lightweight shorts. But Steve was wearing a North Face jacket as he was rolling around because the air conditioner was too much, and his lips
I'm not
were a
that
little
bougie.
blue.
It was Columbia.
Was it a? Yeah, that's right. You guys can go back and see that. We actually, our first sit-down interview together was in a hotel sort of like lobby space, and it was called The Real Patriot Front. I don't know why I remember the name of the title of the episode, but I actually titled it that. That was one of our good times. Anyway, yes, Steve does not want to be in Toronto. I'm not mad at you. What we do want to talk about, though, these issues keep popping up on the campaign trail, and like I just want to see. I called it the technique, the Bill Burr thing. Like, you've already won the argument. I think that's true. I think Republicans for this cycle, that's why people are feeling so confident about the possibility of winning, because the argument is not even fair. Democrats took 4 years. They broke everything that Trump did that was good. They did all the dumb things that they would otherwise do. They destroyed our border. So we have massive amounts of people creeping in. We have fundamentally changed the nature of this country, probably for generations at this point, unless we start doing mass deportations. They're big on abortion, which is a real weird take. I've got this video from this lady. I think this is the video. This is how you end up with this video when you have a presidential candidate who claims to be Catholic saying abortion is actually a moral good. That's been the claim that's been going down on the political left. Such a weird loser, I think. But here, I think, is the video. I did the grab bag again, where I threw all the videos in and I forgot to label them because we were talking. Here we go.
Jesus were giving his sermon today, he might also have said, "Blessed are those who end pregnancies, for they will be known for their loving kindness."
I have to believe that the people sitting in whatever congregation has a fat lady wearing some kind of a sash and pretends to be a cleric of some kind. When that congregation is sitting there and that lady makes the claim that Jesus would have been pro-abortion, I feel like people are jumping out of the pews for the lightning strike that they think is coming. They have to be. Like, how do you make that claim?
You do if you believe in not the real God, but the small G government God that is saying that is an objective good. That's absolution at this point. We're going to actually break into this, I think, in the near future on the American Radicals podcast about leftist absolution and the way that you think of an absolution would be like you have to cleanse yourself. You have to make a personal sacrifice. You're Catholic. You go through Lent. You give up something. There's some sort of sacrifice there. But the leftist absolution is we're going to make you do the sacrifice. So we're going to offer our babies up to Moloch. So we're going to snuff their lives out, and that's our sacrifice. It doesn't impact me personally. Look, I'm still going out and partying every single night. It's just an inconvenience to me, and that's their worldview. That's their demonic worldview.
This actually materializes in a news media front as well, that bizarre thing. The verbiage was what actually struck me. There's a story that comes out of Milwaukee. So we touched on it a little bit earlier. So there it is. 2 teens stole an SUV. They're shot by a Milwaukee officer after a chase. Fetus died. Like, everything about this is weird. Number one, 2 teens, the Utes, if you guys are a My Cousin Vinny type fan, multiple people injured with the police chase. Why were they injured? Because they were doing dumb things and running from the cops. But of course, it appears like the cops are the bad operator here because they shot. A fetus dies. They know that that's a thing, that that's a problem, that there is a child involved in this. And I'm going to read you the opening of this article. Again, this is from the national NBC News. This is not a local news story, even though it is really a local news story because it's just a police chase in Milwaukee. A pregnant 18-year-old was shot and lost her fetus. At least they use the proper gender here, so there's something to be said about that. They'll probably get hosed for assuming her gender. When a Milwaukee police officer fired on a stolen Oh, that might be the problem. Vehicle in connection with 2 carjackings. That's usually a violent crime. It's actually a federal crime if you want to go after it. That led to a police chase and endangered the public on Thursday. I added the endangered the public because they didn't want to add that here. A 17-year-old was also shot and wounded in the interstate incident during the pursuit, which started after the police tried to pull it over, which means, of course, that the SUV ran. The SUV became trapped in a construction zone and struck a police vehicle before being fired upon by officers. Well, let's just break down what that struck a police officer. Okay, and then they said the 18-year-old involved in the incident was in life-threatening condition. Her unborn baby did not survive. Oh, her unborn baby? Oh, we've grown throughout this article as it's being written from a fetus into a baby. How about that? The thing is the political left will always drop the veil given a long enough time because they're still human beings, and it is a facade. It is a fake idea. It's the same reason as asking, are there better people? Are there better cultures? That's the same sort of story. Anyway, a 15-year-old, a 17-year-old, 16-year-old, another 18-year-old woman were all in the vehicle. Apparently, they all jumped in and took over this thing. No idea if they were part of the carjacking and they just couldn't get out, or if they were actually involved in the stupidity. Regardless, all sad. Nothing mentioned about the descriptions of these subjects. I guess that's not relevant to the police story here. But the really wild part is that the shooting, which you're led to believe was just because the cops are jerks, the suspect driver put the vehicle in reverse and struck a marked squad car. The suspect driver drove forward and then reversed the vehicle again. The officer was outside and behind his own vehicle at the time. He discharged his weapon, subsequently striking 2 subjects. Body cam footage is pending. Thoughts and reflections on the way that the story is being presented based on your experience as being a cop and a guy that knows what happens in car chases.
Well, I think that people forget that an automobile, it could be a deadly weapon. And now you have a situation where you go to a use of force continuum policy, and this is using a weapon that could inflict serious injury or death upon the officer or another individual. So deadly force may apply in that situation. I think that they're painting the unborn baby because that story evolves. They're going to try to have another Derek Chauvin, right? Well, now we have a mass shooting, right? At this point, we're going to articulate that. And then the other thing that I looked through the Milwaukee local paper on this one. This is the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and scrolled all the way down. And the one thing that struck me was they were talking about the police chief, who is a black man. But he has made it known that he's applied to be the police chief in the city of Austin, Texas. And that one is more personal to me because I actually applied to be the police chief in the city of Austin, not because I have any particular desire to live in Austin, but because the job listing for the police chief in the city of Austin states, and I will quote, sound understanding of the history of institutional racism in policing and work to continue to provide public safety service in an equitable manner, unquote. And I just really wanted to put my name on that so I could go in and shake things up. That's the type of leadership that the Milwaukee Police Department has there, which is probably why we don't get a description of the victims.
Adrian Diaz is going to get the job over the straight black police chief of Milwaukee. He's the former chief of Seattle's PD and was involved in multiple allegations of sexual malfeasance and so on. But he just trumped everybody, including you, by being a Hispanic man who's married and has 3 children, but has now come out as gay. I listened to his interview talking about that with Jason Rance. And if you guys want to find that, one of you all sent me that. One of our listeners sent me that. And that was very interesting to me, actually, because originally I'm like, why do I care? Why do I care about the police chief of Seattle wanting to be the police chief of Austin? Of course that is the case, just like the Milwaukee one. But the thing that's so interesting is after listening to that guy, you ever hear somebody not be gay that tries to be gay because it sounds good?
Yes, every time Pete Buttigieg talks.
This is why you're my guy, dude. This is why Steve and I get along so well. I feel the same way. I think, if you guys don't know my position, I think Pete Buttigieg is full of it. He may actually be gay at this point because he's just forced himself into it. Like he's eaten enough peas that he just like acts like he likes peas.
Until you make it.
Yeah, he forgot that he doesn't like peas, so now he just does it. That may be real, but when you hear people talk in such a disingenuous way, it's really, really weird. And he was like, sometimes you just, then you realize that there's an attraction to men. It's like the follow-up question, because I'm not a journalist, but I'm an interviewer, just like you. And I'd be like, what do you find attractive about men? What was the thing that made you realize that you were attracted to men? What specifically do you find, what things really get you going? because I want to know how a man that has 3 children and is married to a woman for his whole life, who thinks that he was supposed to go out and get married and do the right thing and run this thing, raise a family and follow the American dream, which, by the way, he's not much older than us. So, like, he lived in the same America I did. And when you were in my America growing up as a kid, you could totally be gay. The guy that was my best friend as a child growing up, like, was known gay from a very, very young age. And it wasn't a shocker. You know, like, Scott just was gay. His mom always assumed he was gay. He was a ballet dancer, like, in his, you know, before he was a teenager. He always had girlfriends. And now he's I think, or at least the last I heard, he was like the lead male ballet dancer in the San Francisco Ballet, which might be the gayest job in America. So I actually sent this interview over to George Santos, who's like one of my resident gaydar checkers. And George Santos, former congressman from New York, and I sent it over to him and I go, George, what do you think? And he was like, that guy is totally using the gay shield. And I was like, right? My wife saw it. I saw it. You saw it. George Santos saw it. I'm going to say that we are coming down on Diaz is totally not gay, and that he is now using it because he doesn't speak like people. You know, when you talk about your wife in effusive terms, if you talk about any woman or any woman talks about a man that they love, like, they have things they love about men, all men, like just the category of men. I couldn't hear him make any claims that sounded even remotely gay. Having been around gay people, having lived in, I lived in San Francisco as an adult. You know a little bit about what gay men are like. Some of them are much more effeminate. Some of them are much more masculine. That guy just comes off as a fat guy who's trying to get out of a civil suit. I don't know how else to describe it. Hopefully that's not slanderous. It's my personal opinion. I have no facts to back that thing up other than it sounded totally disingenuous having looked at people for 42 years of my life.
Oh, you can always just lean on. Well, people are saying that. I mean, that's always
yes. People say sources.
Reports.
Well, my source was George Santos, so I'm actually telling you my source. Like, we both agreed.
Is that kind of like saying, well, I can't be racist because I have a black friend?
I think so. Yeah.
You can't be homophobic because you're friends with George.
I'm friends with George. Yeah. I don't even know if we're friends. We're just acquaintances. I think that's.
I think you're just keeping him on the hook because he owes you $100.
He owes me $100. Can we be real about that too? Anyway, this is such a weird time. Okay, let's talk about seeing things for what they are when they happen. You didn't hear about the story. This is really fun for me. I think this is going to be video clip number 3. So hopefully the U.S., this is when world events kind of line up and you go, That's why we like guys like Mike Benz. Mike Benz, if you guys don't know, Mike Benz Cyber, at Mike Benz Cyber, Benz with a Z on the end of it. I like Mike a lot. He had some controversy and people were like, aren't you going to, renounce your friendship with him? And I'm like, no, he came to my house and he's super smart. He's a really sharp guy. Here's what Mike Benz tweeted out. The Saudis move off the petrodollar last week. And suddenly, 23 years later, it's actually 25 years after this video, 23 years later, the regime media has finally decided to blame the Saudis for 9/11. What an interesting turn of events. So let me throw the thing up, lest you think I'm making this up. This is an actual story. Again, this is coming from 60 Minutes. I got locked in this 60 Minutes little loophole here. Investigators for the 9/11 families have examined videos. These are former FBI agents, by the way, taken by a man with ties to Saudi intelligence, referencing a quote-unquote plan. It's a video that he shot in the like around the U.S. Capitol and the National Mall in 1999 before the 9/11 attacks. Yeah, that's something that those of us who have been paying attention to 9/11 have known for quite a long time. The families have been forever trying to get the Saudis to be held accountable. And then suddenly you get you finally are going to get the mainstream media to cover this. They're only 23 years late to the party here. You ready for the video? Because they're shocked. They're shocked, I tell you.
The CBS News exclusive, the unnerving video outside the U.S. Capitol, filmed 2 years before the 9/11 attacks. Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us. 2 decades ago, the 9/11 Commission found that al-Qaeda acted alone. But victims' families say that is not true, pointing to this video and other evidence as proof. They are suing Saudi Arabia, claiming its government provided crucial assistance to the hijackers and planners behind the September 11th attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people. 60 Minutes correspondent Cecilia Vega reports.
A voice on the video says in Arabic, I am transmitting these scenes to you from the heart of the American capital, Washington. This video, unsealed in federal court this week and obtained by 60 Minutes, was recorded in the summer of 1999. The man behind the camera is Omar al-Bayoumi, who the FBI says was an operative of the Saudi intelligence service with close ties to 2 of the 9/11 hijackers.
All right. So it goes on. He apparently was one of the people that was investigated right away. This video was found days afterwards. I guess he was running around, I think in London, if I read the story correctly, or if my memory is holding on. And, this is not news to anybody that follows this story. This was the Flight 93 story. And then basically the allegation is that the U.S. Capitol would have been the fourth target, the two trade centers, and then the Pentagon, and then boom, U.S. Capitol, but it didn't make it there. So that's the claim. That's news 23 years later. The same week that the Saudis are like, meh, petrodollar, we're done. We're gonna shift our alliances. Like what? How on the nose do they think that they can be and still get away with it? I guess is the real question.
There's never been any consequences. I mean, it's very wag the tail or wag the dog, right? And they've kept this in reserve for a quarter of a century for just such a time as this. And like that was always my question about the Flight 93, because they said, well, it went down to Pennsylvania. It was going to go hit the Capitol. And it just seemed to me like, how do you know that? Pennsylvania is a really long way from Washington, D.C. There's a whole bunch of big buildings along the way. And you're going very specifically.
Right. Why not Langley? Why not Fort Belvoir? Like there's a whole bunch of different targets that you could take out along the whole seaboard from Pennsylvania or, the crossing there. So yes, agreed. I never understood why they thought that was the thing. Of course, they've known it. And, we haven't seen this video before, but I'm sure plenty of people inside the FBI have. The investigators have. The families have made these claims. They were thwarted by the U.S. government, saying that they couldn't bring it because the Saudis are our very good friends, and you don't do that to very good friends, except when the very good friends are no longer interested in being part of your financial regime. So now we're willing to just drop the veil. I mean, they're just doing blatant cover. It's just incredible to see the U.S. media fall. I can't decide whether it's malfeasance or whether it's stupidity. Like whether they're just like, hey, we're going to feed you these scraps. And they're like, that's an incredible story. Julie Kelly style. Is the news media today just a reaction? Are they TikTok reactors to like whatever the government's narrative is? Because that's kind of where I'm getting that vibe.
The vibe to me is the access is so important because they're under such pressure to always come out with more information because the cycle is 24 hours. It's the same reason that sports reporters very seldomly criticize an athlete for a mistake, because if you tick off the basketball player because he played poorly in the finals, then he's gonna be like, you know what, I'm not giving you an interview anymore.
Yeah, God forbid you have accurate commentary on it and call the balls and strikes, because then you won't get invited back to the party. And the party is the thing that's important, not the information. It's kind of like the thing we talked about a little while ago. People need jobs. So the purpose of the reporter's job is to get paid for being a reporter, not to do the work of being a reporter. Kind of like the people who work for the FBI at this point that are knocking on doors of nurses that had a problem with the way that maybe federal funds were spent on transgender surgeries. The job of those FBI agents is to get the FBI agent paycheck, not to be an honorable human being who says, I have an oath and there are some standards that I must abide by, even if I lose the job over it. Is that a be suspendable kind of message there?
That's ultimately what it is. I mean, you have to approach what you're doing and be kind of like in the moment. I mean, from our perspective, what I've always said is I endeavored to finish my career as an FBI agent, but my FBI agent career was secondary to doing the right thing at the right time in the right way for the right reason. And that was, to me, the job description. If that entailed having to not carry around a gun and badge anymore, then that was not a decision. That's a sacrifice that you make because that's your job to do at the time. But that perspective, I think, is just becoming increasingly rare, particularly in federal service now, because the accoutrements that are attached to it are just so good, and people can delude themselves. And it's such a huge, giant behemoth bureaucracy that you can actually convince yourself, because you're really pigeonholed into a small responsibility that, well, I'm not really doing anything wrong here. And
that's it.
That's the cautionary tale of Police Battalion 101, that it started with, oh, well, we're just maintaining security here. And then we're just escorting these people over to the trains. And then finally they're just putting one to the back of their head because they're not moving fast enough, and they're looking forward to doing that. But unless you're willing to take the step back and look at that full train of events that is at play, then you're going to be a boiled frog.
Yes, the heat is always turned up just a little bit more slowly than you're going to recognize. Since we made a Suspendables plug, and I'm wearing one of the new Kyle Seraphin Show shirts. You guys can get those at the-suspendables.com if you want to support my buddy. I had a question come in from one of you all asking about their process for generating the t-shirts. I have no idea what the process is. I have no hand in what the business does. I don't even profit from doing these promos, these little promo things, but you can use my promo code Kyle, Kyle. It's 10% off, KYLE, at the-suspendables.com, supporting the O'Boyle family sweatshop, which needs to get back into high gear because Garrett seems to be like drifting off on some things. He's got some other ideas going on. Let's put him back to work. And then you guys, there is a contact. You can actually contact the shop there. I know Garrett gets those or Heidi gets them and they can deal with them. So in any case, check them out. There it is. There's the shirt. Last little thing, talking about our ex-girlfriend, the silly sort of federal government thing. I thought this was this is what happens when you're doing the job and you think the thing that you're doing doesn't contribute to the greater bad, let's call it. This is really funny. This is a press release coming from Tuesday the 18th this week. Shiprock woman was charged by indictment with straw purchase of a firearm, which was later used in a murder following a violent day-long crime spree in Gallup, New Mexico. Gallup's a rough place, folks. And the FBI agents that work out in Gallup tend to be very, very decent people. Just like the Steve Friend types working the res, they are working the Navajo reservation, which is very violent and has a lot of awful things that happen. It's a tough place to work. The funny thing is that the indictment basically alleges that she knowingly purchased a firearm on behalf of another person, knowing that person intended to use the firearm in furtherance of a felony. That'll be an interesting thing. I'm sure she'll end up pleading out on it if she faces up to 25 years, plus 3 years of supervised release. So they're real proud of themselves. The thing that blew my mind and made it very funny is what I threw on the screen here for you guys. And this, I just want to get Steve's take on it. The case is being prosecuted as part of the Department of Justice Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons Regional Outreach Program, which is supposed to aid in the prevention and the response to missing and murdered Indigenous people through the resolution of MMIP cases and communication and coordination and collaboration with federal and tribal and state and local partners. That is a lot of government words, Steve Friend, to say they've dropped the women part out of the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Program.
They didn't even go to birthing people. No. And they're going to try to jam this square peg in the round hole. And they're going to say, this allegedly female person did a straw purchase. So, she's a native and a gun is a bad thing that could theoretically be used to murder someone. So we'll just shelter it under the umbrella of this program so we can justify its existence.
It's really, really weird to me when they do this stuff. I think that probably the rest of this lady is fine. They have to hold somebody accountable. Hopefully they got the person who actually did the shooting and the murder, whatever that was involved in, right? Like I didn't see that, but maybe that came earlier. But the last piece of it is that they're going to jam it into this political optic thing. So even when you're doing the right thing for these agencies, when you're doing the job and you think that you're not part of the propaganda mission and you're like, my work is honorable, like you just talked about a second ago, there's evidence that they will even slant the decent work that you do into that square peg, round hole scenario where we are now going to cram it into something about missing and murdered Indigenous people. By the way, it was Indians killing Indians. That's how this works. Like just like every ethnic group is most likely to kill their own ethnic group because those are the people that are around them. So we're just trying to deny that. And that, I think, is the bigoted take. The bigoted take is when you deny who the victims are. We see the political left do this over and over again. They want to talk about, who the victim is, but they don't want to talk about that the perpetrator looked just like them. Or in this case, she's a very bad person because she did a straw purchase, but she bought a gun for another Indian that she knew on the res. And then most likely that Indian kills another Indian because that's who kills who in America. Just saying, look around you, whatever people that look like around you, those are the people that are most likely to do damage and violence.
Almost all crime is intra-racial, and that's just a fact. And if you think that you want to have more equity when it comes to the crime, you want to have more interracial crime and think that that's some sort of theoretical good thing to aspire to, you got to better get your head checked.
I just want to read this because this just popped up in our live chat, and it's my new favorite statement. It says, the dildo of consequences rarely arrives lubed. I'm going to work that into an interview somewhere nationally. Thank you. Thank you for that one. Appreciate that, guys. You guys are a special group. Okay, time for our PSA of the Friday. As you guys go into the weekend, it won't be a problem for you on the weekend because the feds don't work on the weekends, but they will. Coming back next week. So as you go into the weekend, make sure you remember ABCD. Steve, I need you to avow this message. Here it comes.
A, B, C. A, always B, B, C, closing. Always be closing. Always be closing.
The door. ABCD, folks. If the FBI knocks on your door, ABCD. Always be closing the door. What do you think? Yeah? Can we make that trend?
I think we should make that trend. And if you want to add the E and consult the Esquire, consult the lawyer.
Yes, talk to my Esquire. I like that too. Okay, I've got a, you want the palate cleanser or you want the 5-star review first? What do you want?
Oh, palate cleanse. Do it.
Okay, here we go, folks. This is fun. This is coming from someone called Mac Glocky on Instagram. I Absolutely love this guy. I hate this kind of music for whatever it's worth. Steve likes angry, what do you call it? Angry boy music?
My wife makes me listen to some music, and she likes the Angry Boy music, so that's what do it. I normally listen to reruns of the Kyle Seraphin podcast.
Such a good promotion there. I refer to this stuff as Daddy Hug Me music. If you liked Korn and Deftones and System of a Down and all these other like real like raucous groups, that's what I call it, Daddy Hug Me music. This is Daddy Hug Me music, but what this guy does is people make suggestions to him. We'll do the one from Shaggy, by the way. He does one from Shaggy in the style, I think, of Korn or something similar. It's really, really good. But he's got some really good impressions of other bands. So he takes fill-in-the-blank band style and then does a different song by someone else. So this is Mbop by Hanson, and I think in the style of Korn, and he's shockingly good at this. If you guys want to follow him, 500,000 people follow him over on Instagram, and 100% giving him credit for where it is. So we're leaving his name on the screen as we play this. Here we go.
If Korn wrote Mbop, 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 Hanson, Mbop, Hanson, Hanson, Mbop, Mbop, Mbop. Okay, jeez.
In this life, only one or two will last, and you go through all the pain and strife, and the gods are fast, the gods are fast, the gods are fast. So run to the ones who really care, in the end they're the ones who are there, and when you get all some loops in your hair, can you tell me who oh yeah.
All right, there's more to the song. It's really good. I hate Daddy Hug Me music. It's not my thing, but like I really like the way he did the mbop part of it because it just made me laugh. Anyway, that guy's got serious talent. If you guys want to go find him, I'll try to throw the link. I may actually just tweet that out to everybody because it's such a fun, it's such a fun remake. Hanson will make you want to pull your eyes out, and that guy makes me want to just laugh about Hanson. So that's better than the alternative.
There's a lot of talent out there, man. And there's just, I always think of like how many people are singing in some sort of church choir that could just be making millions and they're just never discovered out there. Musical talent. I don't have it, but mad respect to those who do and are brave enough to put their content out there for the world to judge.
Yeah, we've actually, we've democratized that in a good way. All right, let me do a 5-star review here. We're running long. Here we go. 5-star review from KDev2006. It says, informative 5 stars. I've been listening to Kyle since I heard him on Bongino. This podcast is one that is a must listen every day. That's a nice short one, folks. We're going to say bye to Steve Friend. Steve, parting thoughts, what you got coming up on AMRAD tomorrow?
American Radicals podcast, rumble.com/AMRADpod. We're going to be doing some wargaming of a couple of decisions, looking backwards, how things could have played out. It'll be a fun exercise Garrett and I will do. Join us there, Rumble, at noontime Eastern, rumble.com/AMRADpod.
AMRADpod. I always like the way that came out. All right, bud, thanks for joining me, and we will wrap this thing up over here. Folks, if you have not already liked this video, make sure you have. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you get our updates, and if you want to subscribe on Rumble and throw us $5 a month, you could do that. That'd be cool. 100% of it comes directly to us, allows us to continue to do this show the way that we like, the way that we want, without anybody else telling us some BS narrative. We don't have to defend the Saudis or other groups because nobody else tells us what to do. Anyway, it's over on rumble.com. Make sure you first hit follow, and then you have the option to subscribe. You can only do it while the live show goes on at 0930 Eastern time till about 10 and change, 10:30 and change. We'll see you guys again after the weekend. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. Be safe. God bless you. See you in the morning on Monday.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.